Welcome back, everyone. This is Frank DiMora from the End Times Research Ministry. Today is October the 30th of 2015. For all of you who have gone to my website and downloaded my book and read chapter 2 about the world empires that were prophesied by Jesus Christ and by the prophet Daniel, God has given us the vision of every major world empire from the time Daniel was alive all the way to the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. And at the end times, the old Roman Empire would revive again. And when this revived Roman Empire came alive again, that would be the indication that Jesus Christ was coming back very, very soon. Now, the last part of Daniel's prophecy, we see the kingdom that he's talking about in Daniel, the 10 horns, from Daniel chapter 7, verse 24 through 25. And so what we know is the revived Roman Empire is coming back. And just at the end of it, there's going to be 10 horns, and these horns stand for kings. So we know kings rule over nations, so there's going to be 10 nations with 10 leaders that are going to be the dominant force in the last days of part of this old Roman Empire. Now, Jesus Christ also talks about these 10 horns in reference to what Daniel talked about. We see that in Revelation chapter 17, verses 12 and 13. So the last portion of this world empire, and God gives us a vision of it, and he shows us these feet and this huge figure that we see in the book of Daniel. And of course the toes are also talked about, and they are 10, but it's just another analogy like the horns. So again, 10 kings ruling over the world, the last world empire at the time that Jesus Christ comes back. Now, I think that's very fitting. When Jesus came the first time, Rome was in power. And when he comes back the second time, we know that the Roman Empire is going to be involved again in the last days as a world empire. Now, for those of you who did read the chapter 2 in my book, you saw me highlight the news articles showing that this European Union, the western end of the old Roman Empire, their goal was to form a one-nation military. If you know anything about the European Union, they're made up of 24 nations, separate nations in a union, but for the most part, they have their own armies. Well, all that is going to change, and let me show you one of the reasons why it's going to change. But the bottom line is this: the old Roman Empire had a massive army, and if the EU, the European Union, the western end of that old Roman Empire, is going to be strong like the first Roman Empire, they would have to join together, give up their sovereignty at arms, if you will, join together just like the United States has one massive military. Well, the European Union is about to do the same thing, and it's only fitting in the last days that they would do that if the European Union is that last Roman Empire, which we are definitely still looking at this time. I wish everybody who is going to watch this video had read chapter 2 in my book, because it does outline the steps the EU has taken since 1954 in the hopes of building a one EU military, a mega military. But this article is brand new. It just came out October the 17th, 2015 by the Express. Look at the headline. European leaders admit EU army developing much faster than people believe. European People's Party, the EPP President Joseph Daul, has now admitted the European Parliament will try to push through plans that would go far beyond what even Mr. Juncker had intended. Under the latest proposals, a common European-wide army would become a force capable of taking on missions of higher intensity and even replace national guards at EU borders. Bureaucrats in Brussels are trying to capitalize on concerns over, now look at this, because this is one of the reasons why I believe that the push for this entire EU army is going to come to fruition. One of the main reasons, Russian aggression, and here's the second one, and this is going to be important as we get into another scripture, and the immigrant crisis, to push through the long-held ambitions for a European army. Whereas Mr. Junkler's original vision was for a force capable of dealing with post-conflict peacekeeping, the European Parliament is now preparing to discuss an aggressive common military force. Let me put it very, very simple. Make a one EU armed military. And this, my friends, would be massive. Mr. Dial admitted, we are going to move towards an EU army much faster than people believe. We won't have an EU army tomorrow, but have to get started. The proposals will be discussed at a summit held by the leaders of the European People's Party, EPP, in Madrid next week. So the ball is rolling. They're going to get going here, try to form this massive army for security reasons. The paper released calls for a European operational headquarters to replace the system of national governments directing their own forces. So that's why in the beginning of the video I said give their military sovereignty away, because they would have to if they're going to combine all their forces under one umbrella, just like the United States. It says the draft plan also demands that power over border control, including European Coast Guard responsibilities, should be handed to the new army. The EPP's paper mentions in today's security involvement, the CSDP stand as one of the weakest spots of the EU's project for peace, integration, and development. Rising threats must now lead to a change in mindset, moving beyond CSDP's focus on post-conflict and low-intensity missions to be able to conduct territorial defense and higher intensity. And you only could do that if you have a huge military. It says Russian aggression against members of the EU and NATO must be deterred. So Russia's aggression is seen in many parts of the world as of late. For example, now they're in Syria. They made their way into the Ukraine, and Europe is really apprehensive about this big bear's push. And they're concerned that Russia may turn their focus sooner or later on the European Union. Now, if the European Union has these independent nations' militaries, it would be obvious that the EU would not be able to respond. But if they had a one massive military and they were threatened, then the ball game changes completely. And this is another reason why I believe that there's going to be a massive push to finally finish this move for a one military juggernaut from the European Union. Now let me focus in, connect the dots on something else here that you may have missed. And for that, we need to go back to the scriptures. So now let's go back to Daniel chapter 2, verses 36 through 44. It says this is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art the king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And so whoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and fowls of heaven, hath he given into thy hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. Now what's happening here, Daniel is telling Nebuchadnezzar this dream. He's interpreting the dream for him. So God showed him that Daniel's vision for Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom was gold. He was the head of it. This is simply what he is saying here. It says, after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. So now he's going to tell him world empire after world empire all the way until the end when the Lord comes back. In verse 40, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Now verse 41 and 42 are very important. I'm going to highlight that. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes. Now we're coming into the figure the last portion of this massive figure that God showed Daniel, and it is the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron. The kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with murry clay. And as the toes and feet were part of iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Going back to this article that came out October the 17th, what is happening right now to the European Union that these officials here at the European Union are pushing for a massive army? Well, it was mentioned right here in blue. They even highlighted the immigrant crisis. So who's coming in? It's Muslims. Hundreds and thousands of Muslims flooding in to the European Union. And this isn't the first time. We've had an influx of Muslims from many Muslim countries go into the European Union. So much so that many of the nations in the European Union are having religious problems because there's so many Muslims and they're trying to establish Sharia law. Now, with an additional influx of Muslim immigrants into a Christian society, or once was a Christian society, the European Union is really regressing in the faith. But the bottom line is, it does not mix. When you put Muslims and Christians together, and when you have a radical Muslim group trying to dominate, it doesn't work. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, and we're going to focus our attention right now on Austria. The WND came out with an article, Islamic invasion pulls triggers, Europe now scrambles for guns. Australians are arming themselves at record rates in an effort to defend their households against feared attacks from Muslim invaders. Tens of thousands of Muslim refugees have poured into Austria from Hungary and Slovenia in recent months on their way to Germany and Sweden, two wealthy European countries that have laid out the welcome mat for immigrants. More than 1 million will end up in Germany alone by the end of this year, according to estimates from the German government. Further down in this article, it says the Czech TV report confirms the long guns, shotguns, and rifles have been flying off the shelves in Austria, and Austrians who haven't already purchased a gun may not have a chance to get one for some time. They're all sold out. And those arming themselves are primarily women. If anyone wants to buy a long gun in Austria right now, too bad for them, the Czech newspaper says. All of them are currently sold out. So this is a prime example. Fear of a flux of over 1 million Muslim refugees, that the Austrians are so fearful that they're beginning to arm themselves with weapons, as you see here. Just one example of how iron and clay in the European Union is not mixing, the Muslims and the Christians, or the Muslims and people who don't believe in anything, or Muslims and anyone else. So now you have the reasons why in the last days I'm watching the feet and the toes from the revived Roman Empire as Europe gets ready to mass together one gigantic military. It is definitely something to keep your eyes on. So let's keep watching the news, find out how fast they integrate all their countries into the last days massive army. God bless. This is Frank DiMora from the End Times Research Ministry.